Hello, yes, a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening to you, however you may be listening and wherever you may be listening. This is the latest edition of the Baldwin Sports Media NFL podcast coming to you at the end of week 3 of the NFL season. I almost had to do a bit of a double take there to double check that it was week 3, because so much has happened already that you'd be forgiven for thinking that we're already into October, we're already into week 5 or week 6 or whatever. But it certainly has been a busy week of news on and off the field, which we are going to be getting into as we always do. But before we do that, I want to do what I always do at the start of the show, which is the admin, as I like to call it. I'm sure there's a better word for it, but I can't I can't think of it. But the admin of just thanking you very much for listening, and don't forget that if you want to like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you are listening to, then feel free to do that. And don't forget you can also like and follow us on our social media platforms as well. On Twitter, we are at MRB Sports Media, and on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok, we are at Baldwin Sports Media. So if you are new, then feel free to go and check those out. And if you are returning, then as always, your listenership, I was going to say patronage, but I'm not sure if that's again quite the right term. Your listenership is always appreciated, and thank you very much for making me a part of your week. And with that, let us get on with the start of the show. And we'll start off with somewhat perfectly the first topic. And that is the news that emerged over the weekend from Adam Schefter that there are some teams who are reportedly showing interest in trading for Carolina Panthers quarterback Bryce Young. Bryce Young obviously recently benched by the Carolina Panthers, and they decided to go with Andy Dalton instead, which turned out to be a bit of a masterstroke if you tend to think it that way, because Andy Dalton went and won this past weekend and put in a very good performance in doing so. I still maintain, as I believe I said it on TikTok. I think I said it on both TikTok and on here. I've definitely said it on at least one, but in case I missed either one, I'll just say it again. I don't think that was the right move for the Panthers. I think that they should have stuck with Bryce Young, and either he will get better, in which case your draft pick has been vindicated and what have you, or you keep playing him and he continues to be bad, and then you put yourself in a position to get the number one draft pick in 2025, and then you're free to do with it whatever you want to. If you want to stick with Bryce Young and say, okay, he just needs X, Y, and Z, then you can use the pick to draft one superstar, or sell the pick away and whatever, or give up on Bryce Young and go and get whoever you deem to be the best quarterback coming out of college. Be it Shador Sanders or Cam Ward or who's the guy out of Texas, Quinn Ewers. There'll always be that. There'll always be that option to go and get them. But either way, you at least have something with the number one draft pick. But what I would say, and this is definitely something I said on TikTok, but I can go into a little bit more detail into it here, is that if you are one of these supposed teams that wants to draft for Bryce Young, which on the surface I can understand, because there will be teams who think that they can be the savior of him. You use the example of Justin Fields, say, in Pittsburgh, not exactly lighting the world up right now, but certainly looking a lot better than he did in his Chicago days, and showing this is what he perhaps could have been. If you go back and look at his performance against the Chargers on the weekend. No, that's just one rescue project. Ryan Tannehill, you look at what he was in Miami, then what he became in Tennessee. The argument can be made there. Baker Mayfield, finally getting resurgence with Tampa Bay. There are plenty of examples. Geno Smith with the Seattle Seahawks. You know, there will be teams out there that think they can rescue Bryce Young. And again, to an extent, I understand the sentiment and the thought behind it. But I just think with Andy Dalton's performance on Sunday, completing 70.3% of his passes, 319 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a passer rating of 123.6, I think that kind of shows that maybe the problem is Bryce Young. Because again, it's the Raiders, and the Raiders are. I still have my doubts about what the Raiders are possibly as a team. I know some people are quite high on them. I'm not personally. I believe if I go back to my predictions at the start of the year, I believe I had them finishing 4th in the division. So I'm not that high on them, but some people are. But anyway, putting up those numbers kind of shows that maybe it is Bryce Young that is at fault. Because if Andy Dalton had come out and put up a stinker, then you could say, okay, maybe it is the pieces around him in Carolina. Maybe the offensive line isn't good, so he's always rushed and having to make bad decisions, or the wide receivers keep dropping, or it's just the coaching staff and maybe they're calling the wrong plays, and whatever excuses you wanted to have, you could have just said, "Oh, see, it's the Carolina Panthers. They're the problem. It's not Bryce Young." These problems would have persisted if they did draft CJ Stroud, for instance, which was the debate when they had the number one pick. So if Andy Dalton put out a stinker, then you can go back to that. But the fact that Andy Dalton put in a good performance kind of puts that element of doubt in it, just to say, oh, this was Bryce Young all along. Now we'll see moving forward what happens, because the Carolina Panthers in their next game, they are facing, as I just looked it up, I should have had this prepared already. They're facing the Bengals this Sunday, which it should be a pretty, again, on paper, should be a pretty tough game for them. But I mean, the Bengals did kind of mess things up a little bit last night against the Commanders, which we'll be touching on later. But again, the Bengals are still a good team. Many people think they are a good team. Many people had them to, make the playoffs and what have you. So that will really be a test. And if Andy Dalton puts up good numbers against the Bengals, maybe he'll see it as something as a revenge game. I don't know. That may factor into it. But if he puts up good numbers, then that's just further evidence to show, right, Bryce Young just can't make it in the NFL. Because it's not a system thing, because this guy's doing great things. It's strictly and purely a him thing. So again, there may be some teams that are willing to trade or want to trade, but I wouldn't be so keen to want to be the saviors for him just yet. Let's wait things out and see how things go, because again, if Andy Dalton puts up another great performance, that's just an indicator that it was all on Bryce Young all along. So maybe you're trying to rescue something that really can't be rescued. That's just my thoughts. I again, as I said at the beginning, I kind of get wanting to be the savior. And again, if you are getting, a number one pick for, you're able to trade him or trade for him to the Carolina Panthers for a 5th or a 6th, for example, you're able to get, a number one pick and only give up a 6th round pick for him and someone with the talent. I get it. But let's just wait to have a few more details first, because now we've got, 17 games of him from last season, or 18 games, or whatever the number is. And you still think you can get something from him when Andy Dalton just goes and proves that with the same group of players, he can actually produce something. So maybe you should be trying to get Andy Dalton as a bridge quarterback rather than trying to get Bryce Young for the future. But that's just my take. And with that, we move on to our second topic of the week, which concerns the Dallas Cowboys and head coach Mike McCarthy. And this notion that he is on the hot seat already because of what the Dallas Cowboys have been doing so far. Now they are 1-2, which is obviously not a great start. And with plenty of talk going on, over the past couple of years, really, over Mike McCarthy and whether or not he is the right man to lead the Cowboys in the future and can he win a Super Bowl with them, and so on and so forth. There was always going to be some questions about Mike McCarthy, about whether or not, again, he's the right man to lead them forward. But what I will say is that I think it's far too early for instance, people to start linking Bill Belichick to the job. Or really any head coach for that matter. I think after 3 games, with the resume that Mike McCarthy has, I think that's far too early. If he'd had 3 years of absolute failure, then yes, after 3 games, you could start saying, oh, it's time to make a change. But I think it's still far too early for us to be doing that, especially when you look at the opponents that the Dallas Cowboys have had. First, they go on the road and beat the Cleveland Browns, which again, they may not be the best team, they may not be Super Bowl champions, but there were some people who did have them as dark horse Super Bowl team. So in effect, that was a good win. Then they come up and, they get embarrassed by the New Orleans Saints. But after the past couple, maybe we start to think the New Orleans Saints are actually a good team rather than a bad team. So is that really such a bad loss? And then this past weekend, they go up against the Baltimore Ravens. Yes, they have problems stopping the run, but in the end, it's a relatively close game. But again, maybe the points are in garbage time or what have you. But the Baltimore Ravens are a team that many people think could challenge for a Super Bowl. So is that really a bad loss? No, it isn't. So I think the idea of talking about Mike McCarthy on the hot seat now, I think it's just a little bit foolish and a little bit early. Now, if these results continue to play out later on in the season and they are, they have a losing record around their Thanksgiving game, for instance, then you can start to think, oh, what does he need to do to save his job? That's a fair question. But I think to do it after 3 games, I think is a little bit far-fetched. And I also want to sort of talk about the idea and of Bill Belichick being the guy to take over the role. I've discussed this plenty of times when I was with my previous job, with Give Me Sport, where Bill Belichick again was sort of looking like he was on the way out of the New England Patriots, and there was talk about whether of what he could do afterwards, because there was talk about maybe the Eagles or the Giants coming to get him, whatever. But there was talk, and the idea of Bill Belichick going to the Dallas Cowboys, I can't put my finger on it, but that just doesn't seem right to me. And I think the main reason is I don't see Jerry Jones giving up the power. Because Bill Belichick and Jerry Jones are sort of in a unique situation in that they both want to be the general manager as well as their main job. You know, Bill Belichick was the general manager in New England, but he had Robert Kraft as the owner. Now, Jerry Jones is the owner and he's the GM, and then he's got whoever the head coach is. Something would have to give there. I don't see Bill Belichick and Jerry Jones working together as co-GMs. So something would have to give. I don't see Bill Belichick giving up his GM spot. I don't see Jerry Jones giving up his. So, just on the surface of it, whose ego would back down or would be forced to back down in order to make that happen? Now, Bill Belichick would have the right to say, "Look, I won 6 Super Bowls with this method." Again, he may have to sort of hide the fact that a large part of it, with the evidence looking that it was largely down to Tom Brady and his brilliance. But he can still say, "Hey, I have 6 Super Bowls. I know how to win these things." But Jerry Jones was, I mean, Jerry Jones doesn't really have anything to back it up, because that's always been the argument, was that he's never crafted a Super Bowl team. It was Jimmy Johnson, and it was, Jimmy Johnson was always the mastermind behind it. So until Jerry Jones wins a Super Bowl, he's never going to get the credit for those. But even so, with Jerry Jones's ego, you've seen you've seen how he behaves. Do you see Jerry Jones backing down and saying, "No, I'm still going to be general manager. I'll get the pieces together. You just go and do it." I just don't see that happening in any way, shape, or form. And if we're being brutally honest with ourselves, do you see that happening either? So there's really 2 stories in here. One, it's too early to be talking about Mike McCarthy being fired. And if he were to be fired, I think it's stupid to start talking about Bill Belichick being the guy to take it over, because there is no way that the two of them are going to get on together. There's just too much of a personality clash in order to make it happen. So I just don't see it. Again, there is a part of me that would like to be wrong, just to see how it would all go along, and whether or not we would have, whether or not Bill Belichick would last the season, or if he would just, throw a hissy fit and say, "I can't work under these conditions," or if Jerry Jones says, "No, I'm not. I can't work under these conditions. I'm gonna, whatever money gets paid, I'll just pay it in severance. You can go." There is a part of me that wants to see it happen, but just in the cold light of day, just looking at the fact, I just don't see it becoming a reality. Yeah, I just don't see it happening. But who knows? We shall have to wait and see. Now I have to say, in doing this has started to become my favourite part of the podcast. Just being able to rattle round various scores and topics around the league, and just see and just just not get into as much depth, but just a bit of a scattergun approach. I'm really liking this section. So let's take a whip around the league and see what headlines have caught my eye this weekend. So we'll start off with, I'm just looking at my notes here. The first point is the Andy Dalton point, which I've sort of made earlier, so we can skip by that. The second one, we've touched on this before in a different way, but in light of Justin Fields' performance against the Chargers, it will start to bring out the discussion again about whether or not the Steelers should trade Russell Wilson. Now, this all came about with, again, I don't know how much of it was media, actual reporting, or if there was any truth to it, or if this was all just fans on Twitter or whatever. But on the surface, at least, it made some level of sense. And that was the idea of the Steelers trading Russell Wilson to the Miami Dolphins to help them get over the situation with Tua Tagovailoa. And you had people throwing out the suggestion that maybe the Steelers should ask for Jalen Waddle in return because they need a wide receiver. Miami needs a quarterback, the win-win for everyone. I sort of poo-pooed that because I just didn't think the trade would make sense because I couldn't see the Dolphins giving up a 1 for him. And at the same time, I couldn't see them giving up a 6th and a player. I just didn't see the trade making sense from a Miami perspective. But from a Steelers perspective as well, because I think there is going to come a time where people will talk about maybe trading Russell Wilson to the Las Vegas Raiders because they're having some quarterback issues at the moment. Gardner Minshew, do they then go to Aiden O'Connell? Whatever. It's not looking. It certainly isn't the most promising situation, shall we say, for the Raiders. Again, if they want to be taken seriously, then maybe they want to get a new quarterback in. So, but my thought mainly from the Steelers' angle of this is, why would you trade him within the AFC when these are teams that could potentially be a threat to you? Especially when it comes to the Miami Dolphins, because again, this is a team that many people think can go far, and I think they can go far. If they put up all the wins in the regular season and manage to get a home field advantage, or at least a couple of home games in the playoffs, I could see them doing well because they don't do well in cold weather. But if you believe that the Dolphins can do well this season, why would you as the Steelers, who also would probably believe, especially after a 3-0 start, that they can do something this year, why would you trade away to someone who could come back and bite you in the playoffs? It just doesn't make sense. You could also sort of flip that around with the Miami Dolphins. Is why would you trade, again, going back to the ridiculous idea, but why would you trade Jalen Waddle to the Pittsburgh Steelers to, again, he could come back and bite you later on in the playoffs? So, for a multitude of reasons, last week I discussed them from one angle, this week discussing from another angle, I just don't see Russell Wilson to the Dolphins happening in any way, shape, or form. Now, there may be some situation in which the Steelers may want to trade away Russell Wilson, say, I'll just pick a name here. Say Brock Purdy with the 49ers. He's got a little bit of an injury at the moment. Say that flares up and that continues to be a problem. They have to shut him down for the season. Again, this is all theoretical. Then maybe I could see the Steelers trading away to the 49ers, maybe, because again it's out of conference. You'd only have to play him in the Super Bowl, and you maybe hope the 49ers would get out at that point. Maybe the Giants, if whatever's happening with Daniel Jones doesn't quite work out, maybe you go there. Maybe again, I'm just spitballing. I haven't put much thought into this, as you can probably tell. In the NFC, God forbid, trade him to the Panthers and see if they can fix that one out. See if Andy Dalton gets injured, maybe see if Russell Wilson can be the one to turn the Panthers around. I don't know. I would not be comfortable, and this is speaking as a Steelers fan, I would not be comfortable trading him within the AFC. Just because I think there is a greater chance for him to come back and bite us for that reason. So, keeping out of the AFC, I still think there is a chance that Russell Wilson proves to be something with the Steelers. If the second Justin Fields has one stinker, I think that will be all the ammunition they need to put Russell Wilson in. So you keep him back as an option there. But if they do decide to trade him, it cannot be within the AFC. I just think that's I just think that's the easy way to go about it. And sticking with the Steelers, and we shall move on to the Chargers now. And the news that Derwin James is set to be suspended for one game after what is basically, paraphrasing, repeated violations of the player health and safety rule. He delivered quite a big hit to Steelers side and Pat Frymouth this past Sunday, which again looks scary on the when you first saw it. Now, Derwin James will have the right to appeal and everything along those lines. However, I do think that this is quite a big and quite an important moment. I think we've seen this happen a couple of times, but I do think that suspending players, in retrospect, for their actions, especially when it comes to health and safety, I think is a great way to crack down on it. Because if it's fines, then there will be some players who just think, maybe not in the moment, but maybe going into the game, whatever, that, oh, I'll deliver a big hit to someone. If all I'm getting is a $5,000 fine, if that helps me win, if that helps the team win, then I'll sacrifice 5,000 or whatever the amount is every single time. But suspending them for a game, then they miss out on a game check and they feel like they've let their teammates down, especially if they go and lose to their key player like Derwin James is, and they go and lose, then they've let their teammates down. All that sort of stuff. I think that is a far greater deterrent than fines would be for repeated thing hits like that again. I am very much pro safety. I don't think I think there are some ways that the league can tone it down a little bit. I think the roughing the quarterback or roughing the passer rule needs to be a little bit changed. I think that's gone a little bit too far. But on the surface, I am pro player safety. So move like this again, brilliant idea. Send a message, send a deterrent, and hopefully it does bring things down in the future. And now moving on to last night's games, where there were two very, very good performances for different, I say for different reasons, but different quarterbacks, but both putting up incredible displays. Josh Allen putting in an absolute fantastic performance against the Jacksonville Jaguars. I'm just going to read you the stat line for those of you who maybe only saw the score because you were watching the other game, which we will get onto in a second. But 76.7% pass completion rate, 263 yards, 4 passing touchdowns, a quarterback rating of 142.1, and add on to that 44 rushing yards as well. And this Josh Allen, when he's like this, I genuinely think that the Bills are the best team in the league. Now, I think that there are better constructed teams. I think on a person-to-person level, I would put the Chiefs ahead of the Bills. I would maybe even edge the Dolphins ahead of the Bills, just because I do believe the Dolphins have a better wide receiver core. But when Josh Allen is like this and is humming the way he is, he just makes everyone else so bad. And because he's such an important part of the thing, I think when Josh Allen is on it, he makes the Buffalo Bills the best team in the league. I genuinely think that. But the overarching concern has always been consistency with him. Can he keep this up all year round? I just don't think he can. Again, I'd like to see it. I have a bit of a soft spot for the Bills because my university roommate when I was doing my masters, he's a Bills fan, so I always have a bit of a soft spot for him as a result. So I do want to see the Buffalo Bills do well, but I just have my concerns that is he able to keep up that level of production all season long? I don't think he is, or I don't think he can rather. But again, I would absolutely love to see it because Josh Allen is one of those players that is just so electrifying. You will turn over your TV to watch him play, unless you were watching Jaden Daniels last night. What a, as people like to say, coming out party that he put up against the Cincinnati Bengals. Again, a team that many people think can go on and do very good things in this season, but to go in on the road on a Monday night prime time, everyone knows that prime time can have an effect on people. Just look at Kirk Cousins and his bad record in prime time, for instance. To go on the road against a very good team, 91.3% pass completion rate, 254 yards, 2 touchdowns, absolutely perfect. And if you see some of the throws he put up as well, the numbers can sometimes be deceiving, but the throws that he put up were absolutely incredible in moments. Now, again, I don't want to get too overhyped. I don't want to, start saying he's the next Peyton Manning, he's the next Tom Brady, whatever. But the odd games like this will just go to show that these players can last in the league. You know, I don't want to keep dragging him down. But when was the last time Bryce Young had a performance like that made you stand up and say, right, this guy can make it in the league? Even if it's just the odd sprinkle like this in a rookie season. The fact that Jaden Daniels was able to do that makes you think, right, he can do something in this league. Again, it may take a while. This may be, just a while, but he has the potential to be something in this league. So great for him. Great for me as well, because it always good to have the Bengals lose because of the AFC North and what have you. But just a fantastic display from him on Monday night. Kudos to him and to the Washington Commanders, who have been through a bit of a rough patch in the past couple of years, but look as if they, again, based off this one game and his first couple of games as well, look as if they have got someone there that can be a franchise quarterback. So good for them. And there's one final bit of news, not the fun bit of news that we always end on, but just one final thing. Christian McCaffrey, running back for the 49ers and number one fantasy pick for many people, including myself, is set to see a specialist in Germany regarding his injury. Now, whenever you hear that specialist, that term, that kind of makes you worried that he is going to be out for a very long time, maybe even the season, maybe the regular season, whatever. I genuinely want to know if the NFL is going to do something about this. Again, this isn't me being sort of angry or whatever, but we'd heard the sort of rumblings that the NFL may be looking into the situation regarding his placement on the injured list because his backup Jordan Mason, after the first Monday night game, told whoever it was in this post game interview that he'd found out on Friday that he was going to be starting. When everyone when Christian McCaffrey was listed as questionable on the Saturday, so on and so forth. We heard there may be rumblings about maybe an investigation. I'm genuinely curious if the NFL is, again, not necessarily launching a major, Spygate or Deflategate level investigation into this, but there are a lot of people who have, again, it's only fantasy football, it's nothing major, although there will be some people who would have put money on this, so maybe there is something to it. But there would have been a lot of people who bet their fantasy football, and again, in the first week as well, bet a lot of money on the expected inclusion of Christian McCaffrey. Now, though, that has come out that, it's got worse, now he needs to see a specialist. If the 49ers have hidden something bad, and I'm not accusing them of doing this, by the way, I refuted I am not accusing them of anything, but this is just playing the hypotheticals. But if they knew something and it was more serious than they perhaps have allowed to let on, then again, we've seen what the NFL has done with regards to messing around with the injury report and what that can do to you. Because again, this is impacting the gamblers, and the NFL has always sort of had that weird relationship with the gamblers. They was always so far against it, but now they're pretty much for it by promoting fantasy football, or whatever. But that weird relationship has always been there. But if the 49ers hid information that they knew, this is worse than maybe they're letting on, then I could genuinely see something happening to the 49ers again. Maybe not fines or droppings or whatever, but something is going to happen to that, because again, if they have misled a bunch of people about the status of Christian McCaffrey, then there could be something to pay as a result of that. So very much, I know I say this a lot, but very much keep an eye on that, because this has the potential to be something pretty significant. And now on to our final story of the week, and I usually stay away from the NFL for this, but I could not. I'm sure if you're on social media, you are probably aware of this, but the fascination that people are getting with Will Levis, the Tennessee Titans quarterback, and his ability to produce incredible photographs as a result of his errors. shall we say. In the first week he threw an interception against the Bears, and there was the photo of him with his hands on his head, like, "Oh no, what am I doing?" This next week against the Jets, pretty much the same sort of thing, but he's fumbling the ball. Go and look for it. It's incredible. And then this past week, he's being sacked by the Packers player, and it's just funny. So the fact that Will Levis, who's got a bit of a reputation for being, for being weird with his obsession with mayonnaise, for instance, and all that sort of stuff. He's not helping himself to become an internet meme and to become an internet personality with what he's doing. Like, again, it's not really his fault, but it's just funny coincidences that 3 weeks in a row he has provided us with hilarious photos as a result of him doing wrong. Again, if you haven't seen it, just look up Will Levis photos. You'll probably see what I'm talking about. But I think I am one of those people who is enjoying what's going to come in, looking forward to seeing what's going to come in week 4 as a result of that. And with that, we also wrap up this edition of the podcast. I want to thank you very much for listening. And as I always say at the end of every show, don't forget, as I remind you at the top, don't forget you can like and subscribe on whatever podcast platform you are listening to. And don't forget to reach out to us on social media. We are on TikTok, YouTube, and Instagram at Baldwin Sports Media. And on Twitter, we are at MRB Sports Media. So thank you very much for listening, and I look forward to speaking to you again next week at the conclusion of week 4, where hopefully there will be as many interesting storylines for us to go through and dive into. So until next time, you guys take care.